Have you ever trusted someone in your work, and then you found out that this person wanted to see your downfall? You know that colleague who always smiles, compliments you in front of others, seems concerned about you, but behind your back, silently sabotages you. If you've ever felt that, you're not alone. And worse, it may be happening now, without you realizing it. Behind the scenes of many professional environments, there is a type of sabotage that leaves no evidence, but leaves scars. It is emotional sabotage. It is corporate betrayal. It is the poison of the false friend at work. Today I'm going to tell you a true story which happened to me and that almost destroyed everything I built, because sometimes the biggest enemy is not the one who yells at you in a meeting. He is the one who calls you partner while digging his downfall. At first, he seemed to be the only one who supported me, in an environment where almost everyone was competitive, cold, distant. He was different. He heard me, he praised me, he gave me advice. It was the typical colleague who makes you think, this guy is on my side, this guy is different. Do you know that feeling of finding an ally in the midst of corporate chaos? That's exactly what I felt. While others mocked my ideas in meetings, he encouraged me. While some colleagues pretended that I didn't exist, he called me to lunch, started a conversation, asked how I was. At first, it seemed empathetic. Later, I realized that it was a strategy. The trap was set with patience. He slowly earned my trust. It was never invasive. It was never obvious. It was like a good manipulator does. It makes you believe you're safe until it's too late. And I, naively, began to trust too much. I started to open my mind, talk about my dreams in the company, of my projects, of the conflicts I had with other colleagues. I started sharing strategic information, things I would never talk about with anyone else, and him always with that. Understanding, look, that calm voice, that ready-made phrase, relax, I'm with you, I'm different from them. But little by little, small signs began to appear. Loose phrases, small leaks, subtle changes in other people's behavior with me. You know when you say something only to someone, and out of nowhere, someone else acts like they know? Deep down, I already felt it. Something was wrong. But when we believe in a false friendship, we prefer to ignore the signs. We want to believe that at least one person there, it's for real, but it wasn't. And that's when it all started to fall apart. Not all at once, but in silence, as if an infiltration was eroding the structures of my reputation within the company. In the beginning, it was just sensations, small perceptions, subtle, almost imperceptible things. But I started to notice a pattern. A strange thing began to happen. Everything I said to him, suddenly, it turned against me. I said, for example, that I thought it was unfair for the boss to favor certain people in certain meetings. It wasn't gossip, it was an outburst between colleagues. It was that kind of conversation that every professional has with someone they trust in the workplace. But 2 days later, the boss himself called me to talk. And guess what? About impartiality in the team's decisions, using phrases very similar to what I had said in particular. At the time, I thought it was a coincidence. After all, nothing there was serious enough to cause distrust. But when this happened other times, I started to put the pieces together. I began to realize that my views, my ideas, even my grievances were being passed on, but always with a subtle tone, as if he was just sharing, helping to understand what I thought. That false corporate sincerity, the most dangerous kind of manipulation in the workplace. A very clear example was in a project I was developing. I had a different idea, something creative that could change the course of an internal campaign we were putting together. I commented on this with him in a cafe, thinking that he would understand the strategic dimension of what I was proposing. He listened, praised him, said he was brilliant, and the next day, he presented the same idea at the meeting as if it were his own, the same concept, the same words, and the worst, he looked at me with that cynical smile, as if to say, You can't prove anything. The management loved it, and he came out as innovative, creative, brilliant, while I sat there digesting in silence the feeling of being robbed. That hurt. But still, I didn't want to believe it. The mind tries to find justifications. Maybe he didn't even realize that he got my idea. Maybe it was unconscious, but it wasn't. None of this was by chance. He knew what he was doing. He was manipulating little by little, taking space, gaining trust from superiors, using what I said as ammunition. Another point that raised my alarm was the way he began to approach key people in the company. People who used to listen to me, respected me, treated me with consideration. Now it was colder, more distant, as if they were seeing another version of me, a distorted version, someone they might have heard of, not a perception based on what they actually saw. A colleague who has always been very close started to avoid me. He no longer answered my emails and messages with the same disposition. A manager with whom I was open started to act rigidly, as if he was testing me. And all this happened gradually, as if a web is being woven around me, a web of subtle gossip, word distortions, mischievous interpretations of my intentions. He was good at it. He knew how to position himself as the sensible guy, the colleague who listens, who tries to help. But behind the scenes, I was building a narrative where I was the unstable, the complainer, the guy who creates problems. And the cruelest, he did this while still maintaining the role of friend. I once received informal feedback from a supervisor. Be careful how you express yourself in meetings. There are people who think you're too negative. And you know what hurt? I barely spoke in the meetings, precisely so as not to seem invasive or complaining. But it was enough for me to confide my frustrations to the friend that it was distilled, drop by drop, in the right ear, disguised as worry, as if he said, I like him a lot, but I'm worried. He's unmotivated. He has been questioning the leadership a lot. Psychological manipulation in the workplace is exactly that. It comes wrapped in wrapping paper. It comes with hugs, smiles, phrases like, I just want to help. But inside, it's pure poison. And the most dangerous thing is that outsiders don't notice. He began to weaken me socially within the company, taking away my credibility little by little, isolating myself, not physically, but in the perception of others. It's as if he were exchanging my connections, the ones that strengthen me, for doubts, by shadows, for versions of my image that I never chose to show. And at this stage, the emotional exhaustion began to hit, because you start to doubt yourself. You start thinking, did I say something wrong? Are they misinterpreting me because of me? Am I exaggerating? But no, I wasn't exaggerating. I was being sabotaged. And this is one of the worst feelings a professional can experience. Being sabotaged without knowing how to prove it. Feeling that your image is being undermined. That people are seeing you with different eyes and not having a single concrete proof that you are being betrayed by someone you trusted. This is the kind of conflict at work that doesn't make headlines, that no one comments on at the company lunch, but it destroys careers because reputation is everything. And when someone starts to move it around the edges, you don't even realize you're being pushed to the bottom. I had moments when I thought about leaving, quit, disappear, because it seemed that nothing made sense. I was doing everything right, delivering results, but at the same time, I felt that I was being judged, watched, labeled, and I didn't know where it came from until I understood. Everything came from him, from the friend, and not because he had something against me directly, but because it was convenient. For him to go up, someone had to come down, and I was the chosen one. Gradually, I connected the dots, the crosstalks, suspicious reactions, the repeated coincidences, the pattern of behavior, and there, at that point in history, what was once a doubt, it has become certainty. I was being sabotaged by someone I myself let in, and the worst, I was the one who gave the keys. But what I did from there, That's what changed everything. Up until that moment, as much as the signs were accumulating, as much as everything pointed in the direction of the truth, there was still a part of me that resisted, a part that wanted to believe that I was exaggerating, that maybe it was all a misunderstanding, because accepting that you've been betrayed by someone you've chosen to trust hurts. And the human being by instinct tries to deny the pain until the last second. But this denial would not last forever. The day it all exploded started like any other. An ordinary Tuesday, one of those in which you believe you are in control, even when the environment around you is already poisoned. I joined the company and realized right away that something was different. The looks, silence, the whispers. That kind of heavy climate that only those who have lived in a toxic environment know how to recognize. It was as if everyone knew something, except me. I went on with my day trying to concentrate. There was an important delivery, a report that I had been preparing for weeks, a big, strategic project that was the perfect chance to consolidate my value in the team. It was the kind of work that required attention to detail, strategic vision, and, above all, leadership confidence. Around 10 in the morning, I was called to a meeting with my direct manager. No agenda, without warning, just a dry invitation. "Can you come here in 10 minutes? That already lit the warning sign inside me. Unexpected meetings rarely bring good news, especially in environments where communication is truncated and leadership is swayed by whispers from behind the scenes. I entered the room and immediately noticed the atmosphere. The chief had a closed face, defensive posture, and a paper in hand. There was no smile, no kindness, just a tension in the air that cut like a knife. He began by saying that he had received worrying reports about my stance, comments that I would be dissatisfied with the company, speaking ill of the leaders, complaining about processes, undermining the spirit of the team. That fell like a punch in the stomach. At the time, my instinct was to ask, who said that? But I knew it was no use. In environments where gossip is institutionalized, they never reveal the source. Cowardice is protected under the name of confidentiality. So I tried to understand. I tried to explain that it didn't make sense. That yes, I had constructive criticism, like any committed professional, but I have always made this clear within the correct channels. I never did anything behind my back. I have never been disrespectful. I always defended the team, but it was no use. The speech was already ready. The trial had already been held, and I was the defendant without the right to defense. And at that moment I realized he had won, the false friend, the one who smiled when he saw me, who said he was on my side, who listened to me, advised, made fun of me in the hallway. He had achieved exactly what he wanted, to isolate me, weaken my image, to transform myself in the eyes of the leadership into someone dangerous, someone disloyal, someone disposable. I left the meeting with my heart racing, with the head spinning, and the feeling of being in a nightmare in which everything collapses at the same time. It was as if all the pieces had finally fallen into place, in a cruel way, but the worst was yet to come. In the late afternoon of that same day, I received an internal email. The title was straightforward, Rework Request. It was about the project I was leading. In the body of the text, a long justification claiming that the material was misaligned with the objectives of the area, and lacked coherence with the guidelines of the leadership. And the most revolting, the words in the email were almost the same as what I had said in an informal tone in a conversation with him days before. I had confided that I found the leadership strategy a little confusing, that the guidelines changed too much, that this hindered delivery, and he took that and used it against me, rewrote, repackaged, and he handed it straight to the boss as if he were signaling a risk. And once again, he came out as the proactive professional, committed to quality, and me, the guy who disrespects hierarchy. There I felt the ground open. It was like being pushed off an emotional cliff. It was no longer just a feeling of betrayal. It was a direct exposure, humiliating, public, and unfair. My name began to circulate backstage with a different weight. That affected me deeply, not only professionally but psychologically. Anxiety hit, insomnia came. I began to doubt everything from me, of the people, of my value. Because let's face it, when your reputation starts to crumble within a corporate environment, it's as if all your effort loses meaning. And the cruelest, no one spoke to me about it openly. Everything was in the shadows. Everything was suggested, hinted at, no direct accusations. But everyone knew, and everyone moved away, until, in a gesture of pure courage, a colleague with whom I had some confidence came to talk to me. And it was she who confirmed what I already knew but still tried to deny. You need to be careful. There is someone passing on everything you say and distorting. And when I asked, with what little hope I had left, "Do you know who it is?" she just looked me in the eye and said, "You already know." It was as if time stopped. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't react. I took a deep breath. There, at that moment, all the fog disappeared. The denial dissolved. The illusion is over. And for the first time, with total clarity, I understood. He was burning me in the back all the time. It was no accident. It was not an exaggeration on my part. It was strategic, cold. He fed on my confidence to build his own rise. He was the kind of professional who plays dirty with velvet gloves, who feigns empathy to have access, who smiles as he sharpens his knife, and the worst, he knew it worked, because toxic environments reward this type of behavior. The smiling saboteur, the corporate handler, the colleague who pretends to be a partner, but sees you only as a step. At that moment inside me, something changed. The pain turned to anger. Anger turned into awareness and consciousness. It became a strategy. Because there, at that point in history, I realized either I learned to protect myself or I would be swallowed up. And it was like that, at the height of the crisis, at the epicenter of sabotage, that I decided to react, but not in the way he expected. I could have freaked out. I could have faced him in the middle of the office, exposed everything there in front of everyone. I could have taken an impulsive attitude in the heat of emotion just to vent the revolt that was accumulated inside. But no, I decided not to play foul play. I decided to win in another way. Because when we get involved with a saboteur, with a corporate manipulator, any miscalculated move can be used against us. And he was counting on it. He wanted an emotional reaction. He wanted me to lose control. He wanted me to burn myself. But I turned the tables without getting my hands dirty. The first thing I did was stop relying on memory, because in the corporate environment, when the truth begins to be distorted, the only weapon you have is proof, and the proof needs to be documented. So I created a personal email box, protected by password and outside the company network. Every important email I sent or received, every strategic conversation, every sore spot, I resent it to this box with title and date. All archived. Everything organized. It gave me a sense of real control. Because now, if someone tried to distort what I said, I would be able to show exactly what was said. And more importantly, I would be able to prove that I was transparent all along. This attitude alone has completely changed my attitude, because I stopped being a hostage to the narrative of others. From that moment on, I started to build my professional armor, and that gave me an absurd internal strength, knowing that I was protecting myself, knowing that I was preparing. The second change was emotional. I stopped opening up. I stopped giving ammunition. I started to observe more and talk less. And most importantly, I continued to be cordial. I didn't leave abruptly, because that would draw attention. I didn't break the bond at once, because he would notice and change the strategy. Instead, I slowly drifted away, changing the type of conversation, exchanging confidence for generality. He would ask me something personal, and I would return with a neutral phrase. He made jokes, I laughed politely, but I didn't get involved. I created an invisible shield between us. This emotional shielding saved me, because that's what the saboteurs want: access. They need your soul to build the character they're going to use against you. And I closed the door. I cut off the power that powered his game. No direct confrontation without fuss, only with emotional intelligence. And little by little, he began to lose space. As I emotionally retreated from him, I began to get closer to strategic people within the company. But it was not a forced rapprochement. I wasn't trying to flatter anyone. I just decided to invest in real relationships. I started to engage more in collective projects, to contribute ideas in meetings in a more objective, clear, and secure way. I began to show value in a visible way, and no longer just behind the scenes. I started to be noticed again, but now with a much firmer, professional presence. There was a specific situation that was a watershed. In a meeting with the company's innovation committee, he tried once again to use an idea of mine. He spoke in his words, in his own way, but this time I was already prepared. I had sent an email 2 days before with the outline of the idea to one of the leaders, in a brainstorming context, not as a formal proposal, but as a contribution. When he brought up the idea, the leader just looked at me and said, "Isn't that what you said in the email, so-and-so?" That moment was magical, not because it exposed him directly, but because he made the room understand, without needing conflict, who was in front. And the best, I didn't have to say anything. It was the subtle proof I needed. A simple email, a simple previous move, but with the weight of a whole narrative that was beginning to be inverted. This kind of silent strategy started to work. Gradually, he became uncomfortable, because saboteurs like to act in the shadows, and I was lighting every corner he used to attack. I started answering everything by email. Even when he called me in the hallway to exchange an idea, I always said, "Send it by email so I can better organize my response." I knew what I was doing. I was taking away from him the power of distortion, and as he began to get more aggressive, trying to provoke reactions or spread even more absurd versions, I stood my ground. No direct confrontation, without getting into his game. And people began to notice, because over time, the truth comes out, and those who act with clarity, constancy, and composure stands out, even in difficult environments, even in toxic companies, even when everything seems to conspire against it. Another thing that helped me a lot was observing his behavior patterns with other people, because manipulators don't choose just one victim. They create systems. And when you start to see how he treats other colleagues, especially the younger ones or those who are vulnerable, you see that the script is the same. And that gave me more confidence, because I realized that the problem wasn't with me. It was his, and that changes everything. But perhaps the most important turning point was internal. Instead of trying to convince others of my truth, I began to take a firm stand on who I was. I started to talk less, act more, show result, be discreet but present, be silent but forceful, be light but strategic. And that, over time, rescued my reputation. I also used a technique that I call strategic silence with subtle proof. That's when you know you're being attacked. But instead of batting, you prepare a small, discrete piece of evidence and place that test in the right place. It can be a screenshot, an email, a recorded meeting with permission, a group comment. Something that, at the right moment, dismantles the saboteur's narrative without needing you to raise your voice. I did this a few times. In one of them, he tried to blame me for a delay in the schedule. He said that I had not delivered a part of the project, but I already had it, and I had the email. And more, I had a print of the read receipt. I didn't confront it. I just forwarded the email to the team with the following sentence: "Follow again, in case someone has lost it in the flow." Is that it? Simple, elegant, precise. The team understood, and he lost strength. Again, no scandal, no exposure. Gradually, he lost control, because the manipulator needs an audience. And when the audience starts to question, the game changes. This is the art of emotional and strategic shielding. It's not about revenge. It's not about attacking. It's about protecting yourself intelligently. It's about understanding that in a hostile work environment, you don't need to shout to be heard. You need to be clear, consistent, and strategic. And that's how, step by step, I regained my position, that I was reconstructing the perception that people had of me, not only as someone technical and competent, but as someone trustworthy, discreet, strong, resilient, someone who, even sabotaged, did not lose control, someone who turned the tables in silence. And as much as the pain of betrayal was still alive, I was no longer the same. That colleague who I once considered a friend was now just a piece out of my field of vision, someone irrelevant because I wasn't playing his game anymore. I had created my own camp, and I was playing on another level. But what happened after that? It was even more unexpected. If I had known what I know today, he would never have made it this far. This phrase doesn't get out of my head. It echoes every time I see someone living what I lived. Every time I hear stories similar to mine of people being burned little by little by a colleague who pretended to be an ally. Because at the end of the day, the pain of professional betrayal doesn't just come from what the other person does. It comes from our own sense of having let it happen, of having trusted, of having exposed himself. Today, looking back, I realize that many signs were there, that the sabotage was built up little by little, but the signs were visible if I had the right eyes to see. And that's exactly why I want you, who got here with me, not to go through what I went through, or, if it is already passing, that it can get out before being swallowed. So let me tell you, with all the authority that pain and experience have given me, don't trust those who praise too much at first. Serious. Compliments are good, they are necessary, but when they are accompanied by a too fast approach, with forced sympathy, with exaggerated interest, wary. The handler is usually charming at first. He knows exactly how to look harmless. He wants to make you feel at ease so that you can later have access to your vulnerabilities. And then, yes, use them against you. Another sign that I ignored, and that today is clear as water, is this: be aware of those who always speak ill of others. Those who live by pointing out the mistakes of others, sooner or later, will point out their own. People like this test their limits with subtle comments, as if it were just an outburst, just an opinion. But deep down, they are creating a gossip network. They are inviting you to participate in something that can turn against you. If you agree, you become an accomplice. If you refuse, you become a target. So, choose not to enter the game. Listen, but don't reinforce. Swerve elegantly. Preserve your integrity. And there's one more thing I would do differently. Don't confuse affinity with trust. Just because someone has the same taste in music as you, or hates the same boss, or makes you laugh during coffee breaks, it doesn't mean that you deserve to hear your truths. Affinity creates quick bonds, but trust needs time, consistency, real proof. I opened up too quickly, and that was what cost me the most. Today, if I start in a new environment, I observe first. I don't isolate myself, I don't close myself off. But I also don't give myself completely. I understood that the corporate environment, no matter how humane we try to become, is still a political territory. And you need to learn how to play the game without losing who you are. If you feel like you're being sabotaged, manipulated, or weakened by someone who claims to be on your side, listen to what I'm going to tell you right now, with all the calmness in the world. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. And unfortunately, you're not alone. Many people today live trapped in a toxic environment, suffering in silence, carrying guilt and doubts that should not be theirs. People who deliver, who make an effort, who want to grow, but it is pulled down by invisible dynamics, by dirty games, by manipulative colleagues. And that's why you need to learn how to shield yourself, shield your emotional, shield your reputation, shield your relationships. Not to live in war, but to survive and thrive in a system that often favors the smart and not the righteous. And you know what? Today, after all, I don't regret trusting it. Because even if it hurt, even if it cost me dearly, that's what made me aware. That's what forged me. That's what prepared me for something bigger. And if you've come this far with me, it's because you're ready too. Ready to step out of the role of victim and take on the role of someone who understands the game, but chooses to play with intelligence and dignity. Now let me ask you something, a simple but powerful thing. Tell me here in the comments if you've ever been through something similar. Have you ever had a friend at work who deep down just wanted to bring you down? Have you ever felt sabotaged by someone who seemed to be on your side? He comments below, "I've lived that." Simple as that. Just those words. That comment is going to be our code. It will show that you are part of that group of people who are no longer willing to swallow sabotage quietly, that they are awakening, that they are looking for tools, that they are, in fact, shielding themselves. And look, if you've made it this far, it's because this content made sense to you. And if it made sense, I have a sincere request. Leave your like. This helps the channel a lot. Show YouTube that this topic matters, that talking about conflicts at work, about toxic environments, about corporate sabotage is urgent. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, click on the subscribe button now, activates the bell. Because here, every week, I bring you real stories, practical strategies, deep reflections, all to help you deal with saboteurs, false allies, toxic bosses, and manipulative environments without losing your essence. And before you leave, let me tell you something important. The next video that's popping up on your screen is simply indispensable. In it, I'll show you how silence can be the most powerful weapon you have in the workplace. It's serious. It's not about being silent. It's about using silence as a tactic, as protection, as a shield. So click on it now. You need to see that. I'll wait for you there.